to A Gem of a Secret podcast. My name's Donna.
And my name is Coco Gem Holiday.
How you doing, Coco?
I'm doing great. She yelled at me. I don't know how to take that, really. Oh, God.
Well, that's good.
I'm doing fine. I'm just, I'm about to, actually, as we're recording this, I'm actually going to go out of town for a couple of days for Ottermine's Heart's birthday, and then come back to town for Donna's birthday as well.
I'm turning 30.
How do you feel about that?
My body is deteriorating.
Yeah. Me and Donna both got some fun medical news as of today.
Yeah.
Of the time of recording this, which is just a testament to, wow, when you're 20, your body's just an invincible machine, and then suddenly you hit 30 and your body's like, by the way,
all of a sudden we're going to have problems.
All the problems.
She wants to fight me.
It's funny, when I was at the dentist today and they took my blood pressure, it was off the chain.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God, are you on blood thinners? And I was like, why? She's like, this is really high. Really high. And I was like, oh, I'm okay. And
cool.
she's like, how are you alive? And I was just like, oh goodness. I was like, can we just redo it? I was like, I have a lot on my mind and I'm really anxious right now. And I was like, because my mouth hurts and I think you're going to tell me I have mouth cancer.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I'll take over. And then so she did it again and it was like way low. And I was like, well, you bring me to this room.
Let me regulate my emotions really quick.
Oh God, it's so bad. Every time I go in to get a blood pressure test, it's always like astronomical because I freak out.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, medical stuff isn't fun.
No, it's just when you age.
Yeah, I know. I've definitely taken a more proactive approach because in my 20s, too, it was like there was that window in my 20s when I was no longer covered under my parents' insurance, and then it was like up to me to have medical coverage. Mm-hmm. And for part of it, I just didn't have any fucking coverage. Mm-hmm. And then for the other part of it, I had really shitty coverage through my job in Colorado. And that didn't cover much at all. It seemed like anytime I had something go wrong while I was living in Colorado and I went in to go have it covered, no, it doesn't cover that. No. And any issues I had there, but living in Oregon and having health insurance here, that's a lot better. I've been able to actually take a more proactive approach to my health.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and then I think that just comes with getting older. I think I was also, when you're drinking and partying and, as you've heard many times in our podcast, just projecting on other people and, living that lifestyle that I lived, especially in my 20s, your health isn't a priority. Neither is your mental health, honestly.
No, not really. Because you don't want it to be. It gets in the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets in the way of all the partying and, and the fun
and the
in air quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's so bad. I've been recognizing too a lot about my health and my invincibility. Because my husband is 28, I think, or something around there. Still, in that realm of but I know he has health problems. He's going to hit 30 and he's going to fall apart harder than me and Donna all day long.
Yeah. I've been moderately healthy in the fact that I try to be active in some ways, but I also, I know that I need to get a better routine down, and I know that I need to focus more on my health. And I think going into my 30s, I want to do more of that. I want to go on more hikes. I want to get some sort of routine down. I want to do yoga. I want to improve my flexibility, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I do too. I want to improve my flexibility, and I also want to go on Pokemon Go walks. I used to do that all the time, and then I just stopped.
Yeah, I did too. I'm stalled at level 32. I'm just gonna stay there at level 32 or 33 or something like that. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Maybe I'm at 35. I don't even know. I don't check the app enough anymore. So yeah.
Donna, what are you wearing this evening?
Well, I'm dressed as a beautiful agate because I'm going rock hounding this weekend for my 30th birthday. So I'm kind of sparkly, yet also a little bit opaque and orange. And yeah, I'm an F-slur.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's dressed as an agate because I don't think I can say that on here.
I am dressed. I've been really into Little Mix lately for no reason.
Yeah.
So I'm dressed like Jessie Nelson before she left in the Sweet Melodies video, wearing that black and white cute bodysuit thing.
Melodies. Take me, made me believe it was real love.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah. We were talking about Little Mix a little bit before we recorded, and also, in relation to me turning 30 again. I'm the same age. I was born in the same year as Jade Thirlwall from Little Mix. So
I love all of them so much. They are so insanely talented.
Yeah.
Like being able to I know they lip sync like a mother when they're dancing, but like when they hit their high notes, I'm like, oh so my god, it's
they're so
good.
Talented.
I really wish that Jessie would recognize that she needs to rejoin that girl group with all those mental health issues that it brought her and get a better therapist while she's there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and also just like, her little solo venture kind of flopped, so.
And then I don't feel like Little Mix was actually ever saying anything negative, but the tabloids were trying to make Little Mix say things against Jessie Nelson. I don't think that was actually happening.
Yeah, a lot of people also with the blackfishing allegations it kind of was, basically.
I mean, it was, but I always and the thing is, I think I found out that Jessie Nelson, I think she is white.
She is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought she was Latina all day long, and I don't think she is.
No.
And so
she's a ginger.
She's a ginger?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. She has red hair, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's okay, never mind. She was blackfishing real hard.
Yeah.
I thought she was just I thought she just had a little bit more darker skin because she's Hispanic, and she just she tans. That's what I thought.
I mean, I don't know. She's had red hair. I guess I don't know if it's natural, but I know that she is white. Yes.
Well, and then the thing is, the thing is and I have to talk about this because we were talking about mental health earlier too.
Yeah.
The thing about, I really respect Jessie Nelson's journey in the sense of wanting to find better mental health. Finding a passion that would fit with her mental health journey. There we go.
Yeah.
And I think, and she started doing her solo career, and then she had aspirations to do pretty much every single thing she's done with Little Mix, but as a solo artist.
Yeah.
And I think that that's admirable. And then also, I did see the interview when she said, "Who are your best friends?" and she didn't name any other girls from the group. So that was kind of problematic and awkward.
Yeah.
And they all wished her well, of course, and they're all pregnant. Little Mix just had babies, and they made great music while they were pregnant too. By the way,
yeah.
Little Mix, part of the podcast. But the thing is, I think that really killed me about it is, I know that Jessie had body issues. She was the biggest girl in the group. Even when she was at her thinnest, she was still the biggest girl in the group. And because just of her body, the way it's shaped, is it just made her look broader, right? And that was one of the things she talked about as being a reason why she left the group.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking, and it sucks. But what was also cool about it is watching a person on stage dancing next to people who are a lot thinner, having it's like watching Lizzo to a degree, where you're seeing somebody on stage being represented that is just beautiful specifically and not comparatively.
Yeah.
Comparatively, she's the biggest girl on stage, but singularly, she's gorgeous and beautiful and a talented dancer, and seeing somebody on stage like that was just awesome.
Yeah.
But I do respect her journey about trying to get out and trying to get better and healthy. But that sucks that her solo album, her solo career is not doing well yet.
It's not. And I don't think that it just had a great, jumping off point with the controversy that she had with it. And she had Nicki Minaj come and defend her and bring her up on a live and all that stuff. But
I feel like Nicki made it more problematic.
She did. She did. Yeah. Because no one agreed with her.
Yeah. And she was just Jessie's just oh God, this is going to ruin my career.
Yeah.
So getting to something more serious.
Yeah.
So this episode today, we wanted to talk about current events and what's happening in Florida and what's happening in Texas.
Yeah, because this is a queer podcast, we also want to put heavy focus on the current events that are happening as far as queer struggles and issues in the United States. And currently, there's a lot going on. So I'll start off by talking about what's going on in Texas. So the governor, Greg Abbott, basically put out a letter that had an order for basically social workers and people in the Department of Children and Family Services in Texas to prosecute or to basically take in parents and like charge them with child abuse if they
Mm-hmm.
were um, going towards affirming their child's gender. So it was a very anti-trans letter that was put out, and basically the position that these social workers were put in, the head of Child and Family Services resigned because their orders were to, without any kind of discrimination to the situation, to prosecute the parents as being as abusing their children. So there was no gray area basically with this. Like it would be considered child abuse if you are affirming your child's gender um, as something opposite from the sex that they were born.
So let's unpack some of the phrases here for some of our listeners, because as we started to grow, I noticed that we're getting a lot more listeners from around the country, or sorry, from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's talk a little bit more about what raising your child affirming their gender. Let's talk about what that actually means.
Yeah. So basically, if their kid is wanting to transition or feels like they were born in the wrong body, experiences that dysphoria, and the parent supports their kid in that transition, that's affirming their gender identity.
And a better example when they're really young is the clothes that they wear.
Yeah.
Like when you like the classic story of the little boy who wanted to wear the Frozen outfit, the Frozen dress, Elsa's dress from Frozen, and people were like, oh, that's terrible. Like, why are you doing that? Blah 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 blah. Like this person buying their kid this dress is affirming their gender, but even in that capacity, it doesn't mean their kid is even transitioning.
Yeah.
Like there is a lot of, when you affirm somebody's gender, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to transition. It doesn't mean that they're not like exploring what it means to be non-binary without knowing what those terms mean. And because when you affirm your kid's gender, it actually makes them open up to you more.
Yeah.
It helps with their mental health.
Yeah.
It helps with communications that'll come in teenage years. It also makes them to where they don't lie to you because they feel supported by you.
Yeah. And this would also strictly prohibit any kind of adolescents from seeking hormone therapy as well.
Yes.
And that, in a lot of ways, is something that messes with their dysphoria. It really can, like, mess with your mental health if you're not able to get the like type of treatment that you want to help with your transition.
Right.
And so this is in a lot of ways problematic. There's been a lot of support from legislators for this as well. So this isn't just something on part of the governor. Obviously, Texas is very conservative, so there's
many parts of it are, yes.
Yes, many parts. Not the good old little blue Austin.
But
and there was hope that Texas would actually turn blue in the last election. There was actually hope behind that because the demographics had shifted so much. But we have to consider that there is like a lot of people say with situations like this, they're like, well, like just move to another state if you don't like the situations there, the conditions there. And it's like, that's easier said than done.
It is.
And there are people who have families there who have lived there for a long time and are established in that state. And to honestly, it's such an infringement on like someone's liberties, and especially kids. Like the real abuse is the shit that these legislators are putting out there.
Yeah.
These fascists that are thinking that they need to control everything that these kids do and what these parents do.
Yes. And what's really heartbreaking about this is that I do remember as a kid, I wasn't really aware of what was happening in the news. I wasn't really aware of, if something like this happened when we were kids, I wouldn't have heard about it because I wasn't really up on those things. But kids nowadays, and do tend to, and I don't mean like kids that young, but like have social media, they have smartphones, they have access to knowledge more so than I would have had access to when I was a kid. And what's really sucky about this is that kids aren't stupid in certain capacities. Like they know that something's wrong, right? And then like what also bothers me about this is like they're police, like Donna said, like they're policing how people raise their children, which is problematic.
Yeah.
Especially when it's not hurting the kid, and they're trying to make it seem like they're hurting their kids.
Yeah.
Literally.
And also making it to where there's no nuance to the issue either.
Yeah, not even a little. And the thing is, like, every parent, like I should say this on this podcast, every parent knows that their kid could potentially grow out of the feelings of wanting to explore their gender identity, and not even grow out. A better word would be, they might settle on cisgender after exploring their gender identity. They were like, oh yeah, like, or maybe I'm just like a little bit non-binary, like, or something like that. Or they might be like, oh yeah, I want to transition, and giving the kids the freedom to be able to do that makes them healthier.
Yeah.
Ugh, it just kills me because like it starts a conversation that's really problematic in another sense too. Is that when you have the government too involved in how you raise your children, like it like kills free thinking.
Yeah.
It fully kills free thinking.
Oh, very much so. And there's so many documented cases of kids not being able to transition or not having supporting or affirming parents and unfortunately taking their own lives. And this was all too much of a case, especially back before things like marriage equality had passed and we had made a lot of progress as a community. And so I want people to remember those cases because they, so many of them have occurred and it is incredibly sad, to where these kids will express that they are wanting to transition and express their authentic selves, and their parents bury them as the opposite gender of what they wanted to be, and still refuse to refer to them by their pronouns. And
being a kid is hard enough already without the support of your teachers, your parents, and the administration and whatever. Like, you're already bullied because you're different.
Yes.
And yes, the world is actually getting a little bit better when it comes to schools. Like, they're not as problematic in the sense of kids to other kids when it comes to things like sexual orientation. However, kids are still bullied for whatever reason. You wore weird socks. Your hair looked weird one day. We all remember what it was like being a kid. You got teased for anything. And then for serious issues, they created lifelong traumas that most of us are still unpacking with our therapists.
Yeah.
Actually, a great example of this, I wrote about this online recently. So The Proud Family has a reboot that they've released. The Proud Family is a cartoon show about a black family they're kind of well off mostly. And like the characters are, I will say stereotypically black, but what I mean by stereotypically is they actually seem like real black people. Like, even though they do play into some of like the verbiage and whatever, but kids actually say that stuff, so it's fine. So I'm watching the reboot, and I just finished watching the last episode of like the reboot, which is, I think it's like episode 4. It's called Fathers or something like that. And the episode is about Penny's new friends at school that she's finally friends with. It turns out that they have gay dads. And Penny, because the goal of the Proud Family is that Penny is just always raised right. The thing that Penny does is because she's always raised right. The decision she makes is because she has good parents. It's about trying to, like, the Proud Family is like bringing the black family back to that dynamic. And so, to get to the point a little faster, what happens is Oscar, Penny's dad, is not okay with that their neighbors are gay and have children. Like, he's just not okay with that. Like, and they did this thing in Cartoon World where it shattered his worldview. So every time he sees the dads together, his like eyes break, and so he can't like see clearly because it's literally shattered on the inside. I love that they did that imagery because, like, as an adult, I was like, oh, that's really good, really good. Because what happens towards the end of the episode is like Penny's just like hanging out and like and also the gay dads are an interracial couple, which is also super cool. There's actually an on-screen kiss. Blew my mind with a cartoon show. Like, I was like, they kiss at the end of the episode. The dads do, and that was awesome. And I remember they're just dancing at the dad's house later, and Oscar's like watching his daughter like not be bothered by the situation, is incredibly accepting of it, and he starts to cry. Which actually heals his shattered eyes. About how he even made a comment, the subtlest intersectional comment that said, because the dad that he was arguing with was black, and he was like, "We're still brothers, and we got to like keep fighting and fight for what's happening in this room here, you know, like, and moving forward. And it was like the subtlest intersectional, like, that your love is beautiful, but we still are brothers in the sense of our race, and like I should be aware of that and not make life harder for you. It was the most iconic cartoon episode I think I've ever seen in my life. I started crying. Like, it was so bad, because I would have loved to have that stuff.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid trying to discover who I was, and the gay characters are not beautiful. They just look like normal people, and that's kind of what this, like, that's what this is about. Like, I was denied this, crying as a 35-year-old man later in life, because I was denied this. Like, that was traumatic for me to see something so happy and so open, and so denying people the ability to raise your children with that openness is so wrong.
It is so wrong. And as you alluded to earlier, the order that Abbott put out there was for teachers to report parents and report transgender kid. And like, it's literal Nazis, you know? Like,
it's literal Nazis.
Like, it's asking to report families. It's beyond to me. And so luckily not everyone in Texas feels that way, and there was a district court judge that ruled this unconstitutional. So there will be a trial regarding these orders in July. But yeah, that's basically what's happened with it. And
thank goodness.
Yeah.
My God, I can't. And I know that there was an article, and I don't have the number, sorry listeners, but there was an article came out that said there's a lot of like anti-LGBT like movements in effect
happening
right now.
Yeah.
That some haven't gotten to the courts, some haven't been brought to the floor like yet, but there have been stirrings from like grassroots anti-LGBT organizations that are trying to push these narratives, because they don't want this accepting nature of, and a lot of it has to do with trans folks.
Yeah.
They lump LGBTQ in there, even though LGBT folks, like, we band together, but LGBT folks know the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity.
Yeah.
But they lump it all together to like have a better argument against the trans community, and the trans community isn't as large as the full rainbow of LGBT.
And they, the trans community gets their own discrimination within the community too. We know that the trans community definitely has it the hardest when it comes to acceptance and people really, supporting policies that affirm them.
And it really sucks because and they face the discrimination on levels as simplistic as like a gay boy won't date a trans man kind of discrimination.
The most dangerous, it's most dangerous to be a trans woman of color in this country.
It is. And that has not changed.
It's not changed
in the years.
There's a death every month, at least.
And and the emphasis that we put on that, small trigger warning, the emphasis that we put on that is not working. It's not saving their lives.
No.
Like, I see trans women of color being treated so much less than white trans women across the board.
Yeah.
And that's disgusting to me. And of course it's disgusting to all of you, but the ways that we can help with that specific issue is, well, one, like this thing, being able to start early teaching your kids about transgender individuals, that helps. Like, teaching people about gender identity and what that means, that also helps. But for today, for those of us who are grown, we've learned as much as we felt like we need to know, is that it does take communities outside of the one that's being hurt to be able to protect those communities from the negativities that are happening.
Yeah. Like,
one of my drag kids is like a trans woman of color. Like, my goodness. Like, and actually, and all of my most of my drag kids are all gender non-conforming in some capacity.
Yeah.
So even myself. So I get it. And we need to do better.
Me too.
We need to do better.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Donna, I forgot to ask, how are you doing this evening?
Well, I will let you know after this brief break.
It's a podcast with Coco and Donna, tell a podcast. Tune into What They Tell You podcast with Coco and Donna, tell a podcast.
I am actually feeling fairly hopeful because the next subject that we're going to talk about has a lot of Gen Zers like really galvanized against it and making a difference and walking out of their schools actually for
Yeah.
this controversy. So I want you to go into it a
Yeah,
little
so
bit for us.
we're going to be talking about the Don't Say Gay bill that I believe was actually signed into law at this point in Florida. I do know that the last update I read is it went to the governor's desk to be signed.
Be signed, yeah.
And he was in full support of it, and so I'm pretty sure it's going to be signed. And it's pretty much about the subjects that we're allowed to talk about, and I think it was K through 3, and it specifically is really targeting the trans community to not talk about like transness, and he kept saying transgenderism, which is like gosh, that
or same-sex parents too,
or same-sex parents, same-sex parents and whatever. So like pretty much denying the existence of these people.
Yeah, when there are kids who have same-sex parents going to these schools.
Yeah, because they don't want parents. It's almost like the same thing. They don't want to have to necessarily have conversations with kids about subjects that they're ill prepared for. And what kills me about this is like not having these subjects being taught in school. Or these subjects even being brought up in school, it makes it to, once again, you're putting kids into a position that like their identities are being denied. Which, by the way, the interview I was watching with the governor kept talking about, he kept conflating the word sexual with sexual orientation and sexuality. He conflated all of that idea in front of this group of people, and that was also infuriating because like when you hear kids being sexual, every single person feels disgusted. Sexualizing the subject.
Yes.
Making it, they conflating those topics, so it makes it to where like, oh wait, we're talking about kids having sex. That's what it sounded like. We were talking about kids having sex when we were talking about sexual orientation and sexual orientation. Yeah. And gender identity. And what was bothering me about all of that is that it completely threw the argument out of the window. They're like, this is inappropriate. Why would we talk about these things? Or why do we want to talk about two dudes fucking? It's like, no, we want to talk about the fact that this kid has two dads. Like what we talked about, like with the Proud Family. Like this, and like not being able to talk about that when that's your home life, like there's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Like that creates an inherent distrust of the system and yourself and everything. It's almost like a good example of this is like when I first learned about slavery in like 3rd or 4th grade, or 5th, it made me feel like I was wrong.
Yeah.
Like in my existence, like in my literal existence. Like it's like talking about how when you find out, because I was, my parents got divorced when I was 2, finding out that other kids that had dads that lived in the home.
Yeah.
And like, it's jarring to know that like you can't speak about these issues or it's wrong or you can't be taught about these issues, and that's just disgusting. And this one actually made it through, and that's why they call it Don't Say Gay. It's not because there's anywhere in there that says you can't say the word gay. That's what Republicans and conservatives are trying to say. What they're talking about is like the concepts and the ideas and sexual orientation and gender identity. It's like you're not allowed to teach these things or practice these things, which means it's like you can't talk about it.
So is it only restricted to those grades? Because there's high schoolers that are currently walking out.
Yeah, I believe I do believe it's actually only K through 3, but it galvanized everybody, obviously. Yeah. Though there are stirrings in the bill that says about age appropriate and developmental appropriate so that's why more kids I think are being galvanized in high school ages as well, because it has the potential to affect them through 12th grade.
And it's not clearly defined in the bill.
Yeah.
It's like they're purposely leaving it vague to open the door for further discrimination and further like censoring of gay figures in history and things that would potentially benefit students in the public landscape.
It's like the same concept, not to necessarily conflate these two issues, but like it's like critical race theory in schools as well. Like it's actually not the exact same, because we know like you can't hide black people. We know they exist. You can't hide people of color. They know they exist, and actually POC are technically a part of history. It's just not critically thought about. What this is doing is almost like denying the existence.
Yeah.
And like because you can hide sexual orientation at a very early age.
Yeah.
But the thing is like that, God, wouldn't it suck to be like lesbian parents going to like parent teacher conferences?
Yeah.
And being like,
oh, apparently,
what the hell?
Apparently my partner and I don't exist.
I know, this is so great. Like,
don't let the kids see us, you know, like,
Oh God. And oh gosh, that is problematic.
It's so much so. And granted, like you and I weren't really taught anything about queer historical figures.
Oh, absolutely not.
No, and there was never an emphasis, never. So like, we didn't learn till later that a lot of historical figures actually had like tendencies towards queer identity.
So many historical figures, like Alexander the Great, for instance.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, just it's so. What bothers me about that entire era of like these historical figures and leaders and things like that who did kind of dip their toe into that market, and they didn't even have those words. I heard a phrase recently, actually, when I moved to Portland, that's older people who didn't ever come across the term trans when they were younger talk about how they would be trans.
Yeah.
And some, like, obviously still will transition at 50 or 60
later in life,
but there are a lot of people out there because those concepts didn't exist, so they stayed in a body that didn't necessarily feel like their own, not because of financial means or anything like that, but almost because of education. Like literally what we're talking about, education. Like these concepts and ideas are like, so having a person live an entire full life and probably even a happy life, like to a degree, not being able to explore the side of themselves that was always a part of themselves. They just didn't even know what it was. They didn't know what it was. Because
they didn't have the exposure.
Yeah.
And that's what this is doing. It's limiting the exposure of...
Because they know, actually, because that's the bottom line behind it too, as nasty as this sounds. Like when you expose people to different walks of life, it's something I've said on this podcast before, I think the best way to change somebody's mind is exposure. Like, if you have a friend who's gay, you will more than likely always vote in favor of gay.
Yeah.
Like, it's just true.
Because you have people in your life that you care about that you don't want to see hurt.
Yeah.
If you have empathy and...
Which we know some of y'all out there don't.
Yeah. If you have, like, a lot of empathy for the struggle, like, queer struggles. I also think that this is just kind of along the lines of the Anita Bryant witch hunts that happened in like the 70s, all of that shit. Like it's along those lines of like gays are trying to recruit kids, the whole, that it's like this nasty, like sort of like dark, agenda that we have to like turn the kids gay and worship the devil, like it's always this like far right mentality that we are out to recruit.
And what's interesting about it is like even another historical figure who's still alive today, Angela Davis, for instance.
Yeah.
Like I think that if like queerness could be accepted and not taught is a weird word. If it can be just a part of the conversation of being a kid. Yeah. Like, mommy and daddy, or daddy and daddy, or mommy and mommy. Like stuff like that. Like even those basic concepts being
kids can understand those basic concepts.
But even like I was thinking about with Angela Davis, how later in life she did mostly come out as queer.
Yeah.
But never really did a public statement about it. And like, because there's still a lot of shame for Black women to, have another label that makes them incredibly more marginalized. Yeah. And like, oh, and then to my previous statement, I don't actually know what non-binary individuals call themselves to their kids in a married relationship. So I would have added that. I just don't know what it is. So if anybody wants to write me in the comments at agemofasecretpodcast.com.
Partners.
Probably partners, but like when kids to the parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't ever think about it. I can probably Google it myself, but let's start a dialogue.
Yeah.
Educate us.
That is something because I'm not a parent, but I am non-binary. So I don't really know what I would want.
Yeah, what would you want?
Mod. Mix between mom and dad. I don't know.
I hate that so much.
I do
and
too.
And I'm denying that identity for you. Somebody's going to be like, I go by mod. It's like, no, you don't.
I don't know. I don't know. No.
No, it'd be damn. It'd be damn. But that's just as bad. Dumb, damn, and mod.
I don't know what I would want my kids to call me, honestly.
Or mad.
Mad. Because I'm always mad.
I'm always mad.
I'm always frustrated.
I'm always mad.
Do your laundry, damn it.
I don't even know what I would want to be called. It's funny because I'm bigender. but I live in the binaries. And so, like, obviously dad is fine for me, but obviously my husband is cisgender. And I've been wondering about what to be called. And I think it's going to be really problematic because I think I don't want Papa. I hate that. And that's not against any gay men who do that. I don't want it in my life. Yeah. I don't mean, even if Adam likes being called Papa, no. That's not happening for our children. I really want our names to be Dad and Daddy. Like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And then also, like, but I want to be able for us to be able to get, I want inflection remembrance too, to where even if our kid starts calling us both Daddy, then I want to be able to have the inflection recognition to know which dad that they're speaking to.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking a lot about this because we're thinking about having children in a few years, and like so, that is the names that I want.
Yeah, yeah, that's neat. Yeah. I have no idea. I don't even know down the line if kids are like something I want. I love being an uncle. That's great because I don't have the responsibilities, and that's also I just think like the youth in me still speaking. I don't know if like later down the line, if I'm older, if I want to like have a family, but I would hope that like the kids that I have are able to be in a world where they can at least have their like parents feel like they are like recognized while they're in school, you know, and that we matter.
Yeah, absolutely. This kind of took a tangent, but like actually not really, because if we don't know and we're obviously we're queer people, and we don't even know what these labels are for non-binary parents from their kids to them, then that's absolutely not going to be in those schools either. Yeah, like, and that kind of sucks.
Because I think also it is just kind of whatever fits, whatever the kid chooses, and you know if it sticks, it sticks. Like maybe there's not a whole lot of thought put into these labels.
I was watching one of my I was on non-binary teacher TikTok. And one of the questions actually was, what do you like to be called? Yeah. Is it mix? Because, you know, mix is commonly used. And they were like, no, I go by Captain.
Captain?
Yeah. I'm Captain last name. I'm like, all right. I was like, I love that. I was like, that is fantastic.
I'm Comrade. Because I'm a leftist.
I honestly think
Comrade Donna.
I think all teachers should actually go by Captain. We should turn it into a gender non-specific title, and every teacher is Captain. I
love that. I love that. So something actually interesting, since we are talking about the Don't Say Gay bill, you mentioned in the first half of the episode that the Proud Family, which is on Disney Plus and produced by Disney, has this queer representation finally, and I think that's awesome, especially for that show. But Disney has donated a lot of money to senators that support this Don't Say Gay bill. And there's been a lot of call outs on social media against Disney because of this, including there was a call out actually from one of the Pixar animators and producers that said that Disney constantly cut any sort of like gay subject matter or queer subject matter from films when it was put in, and basically like hollowed out these beautiful, vibrant queer characters to a shell of what they were supposed to be. Ooh. So, with that in mind, what is your opinion, I guess, on that?
Well, so the thing is, this is where this gets muddy. Disney's such a large company. Yeah. So, as of 8 days ago, an NPR article says, after protests, Disney CEO speaks out against Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. That doesn't mean... Donna's so bright in that point, though. Disney donated to these politicians who were in favor of this, right? So coming out against it at this stage of the game isn't necessarily helpful because it's been what we believe to be signed into law. Yes. So that is incredibly problematic. I think that Disney... So this is what I think about the subject of performative responses and
rainbow activism.
Or
rainbow capitalism.
Rainbow capitalism as well. Oh, actually, that's a much better word. Rainbow capitalism is that Disney. So I worked for Disney World over a decade ago, and I can tell you right now, everybody at Disney is queer or queer adjacent that works at Disney World, and like those people. I sorry. So staffers at Disney were staging walkouts. So that did happen.
Yeah.
Like many people who worked for Disney were doing walkouts because they're like, oh no, we're not going to work for a company that did this. Like, because that's denying our identity.
Yeah.
And so Disney, I do think, is responding to consequences. I don't think they're playing into rainbow capitalists. I think they're responding to their own actions.
Yeah.
Like, you did this. This is what happened. Like, most of your employees are queer as hell. Mm-hmm. And, like, I honestly don't know how the Proud family got the green light. I know that Kyla Pratt is the executive producer on the show. Mm-hmm. Like, I think she's the one who actually brought it back.
Yeah.
And with all the original voice actors as much as she could. And, like, I don't know how, like, every episode, like, the very first episode, Penny's best friend is gay. Like, the secondary episode or third episode, like, Penny becomes an influencer against somebody, a person called Makeup Boy.
Yeah.
Who is queer-coded as hell.
Yeah.
And so, I think I'm just disgusted overall.
Yeah.
Because Disney oftentimes will leave it in, like, their employees are the casualties.
Yeah.
Like, that's what makes me so disgusted by it.
Yeah.
And, like, they, like, so this kind of plays into the controversy online that's going on right now about when maybe it is performative or rainbow capitalism, is that there is that new Disney Pixar movie that came out about red pandas. Mm-hmm. And I think it's supposed to be like a code for womanhood and like periods and all this other stuff. And there's not a lot of white people in the movie per se. And like people were getting really pissed because Disney is playing into the audience. Disney is playing to what we asked for. Most of us asked for. We wanted queerness.
We wanted diverse stories.
There we go. We wanted diverse stories with characters that looked like real people.
Yes.
And so they played into that to get our money, and it worked for the most part. Like, I mean, they didn't go hard enough in Frozen. Like, they knew that if they would have made that character queer, like, people would have just lost their crap. And they, like, even when they tried to like have a subtleness of leaving Elsa being a lesbian, mm-hmm. like I can tell they pulled back from it.
Oh yeah,
like
they did,
because they didn't want to lose all of that money.
Yeah,
like if Disney wanted to really put their money where their mouth is, and yes, they're kind of doing it with the Proud family. Like they really should be
doubling down.
They should double down, honestly, and do better. And
yeah.
By the way, I don't mean to keep saying that because I actually hate when people say do better. I think it's awful. It's just because it doesn't mean.
Does it remind you of certain performative activists?
It actually just reminds me of performative activism as a whole. Like,
yeah,
do better, and then just like leave it to people to still be hurt and marginalized.
Yeah.
I think that Disney has a lot of work to do, and like donating money to LGBTQ centered organizations doesn't mean anything. But honestly, I think Disney owes us an apology.
Yeah. Like
more so than anything else, and it sounds like. I haven't fully gone through the NPR article where the CEO said those things. It said the company is reassessing their approach to advocacy, including political givings in Florida and beyond.
Yeah.
Disney CEO called Ron DeSantis, which is the governor of Florida, Wednesday morning to express their disappointment and concern that if the legislation becomes law, it could be used to unfairly target gay, lesbian, non-binary, and transgender kids and families.
Yes.
So, but it seems like it was a day too late.
Yeah, because it had already passed.
It had already passed on the Tuesday.
I think this will likely get ruled unconstitutional by a circuit judge. Yeah. At least that's my hope. It's quite unconstitutional.
I think we should add this part in here too. So like the Disney CEO also announced that Disney has signed the Human Rights Campaign statement opposing similar legislative efforts, and the CEO of the company will pledge $5 million to organizations working to protect LGBTQ+ rights, including the Human Rights Campaign. But the HRC now says it won't take those funds. That's the most HRC move I've heard.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. We're good.
We're good.
We're good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the best way to kind of like sum up the controversy with this bill is the fact that we are seeing an immense amount of backlash, and I love that we're seeing it from the younger generation.
Yeah.
I don't know if our generation ever would have had the gusto to completely walk out of class because they never would have, because it was, the thing is, like, especially where I'm from, LGBT people were so stigmatized that no one would have stood up for us, including our own damn selves back then.
No.
I feel like the Gen Zers are far more queer and far more vibrant. What is it? 1 in every 3 Gen Zers identify as queer now.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing the tides change only because of this generational turnover, and we'll continue to see people be more accepting, but it's going to take us some time. Just like I think most changes in our society are going to take us some real time, and it's going to take time for a lot of these people who should not be making laws to be weeded out of our system.
It reminds me that, yeah, I agree with you on that. And to make it a little bit lighter as we get closer to the end of our episode, it reminds me of a TikTok that I watched recently.
Yeah.
Of this queer woman who said, this straight, cisgender, white man hit on me today, and I just want to know what I'm doing wrong.
Oh, God.
I was like, dang.
Yeah.
Oh. And someone in the comments like, she's like, girl, me too. I don't understand. She's like, I can't put on any more rainbows. Oh God. And it just, but it's true though. Like when we were growing up, we just didn't have,
we had Glee.
We had Glee.
And that turned out to be really problematic as we look on it with a closer microscope.
The lens of the queer characters in that show were not great.
Yeah.
And
Buffy was okay.
Buffy was good.
But
Will and Grace was mostly fine.
Yeah.
But that was kind of more for adults, not kids.
But the kill your gays trope in Buffy, see, that's another bad part of it.
Yeah. So I'm remembering a moment with my dad about toxic masculinity, and I think I've talked about it previously, but now that we have new followers, I just want to just add this small story to the end here. When I was a young kid, I do remember, it was probably like 5 episodes ago. When I was a young kid, I used to hold my hands in front of me, and because it was a safety net, that's how I stood. It was that I always stood that way. It always made me feel safe, just standing with my hands. I used to just have my left hand on my right wrist. That's just how I stood.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I always stood everywhere. And I remember my dad was like over one day, and like he just, he was yelling at me about because my voice was really high as a kid. And he was yelling at me about that, and then he smacked my hands apart and said, he's like, men don't stand like that. And I was like, what's wrong with standing like that? He's like, you stand with your hands at your sides, or you stand with your hands behind you, but you don't stand with your hands being crossed in front of you. Like, that's for girls. And I was so, this is why this is important too to the Don't Say Gay bill. I was so confused because in no media, because remember, we're all conditioned by media, all cartoons, everything. In no media anywhere did anyone ever hold their hands the way I was, like holding their wrists the way that I was.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't flamboyant. I was just standing. That's how I stood. And so for my dad to like shatter my worldview in that moment was like really alarming. And how angry he was. 'Cause my dad's an angry person.
Yeah.
How angry he was in that moment because like I didn't want to be a girl because girls got made fun of when I was a kid, of course. And like, and I didn't feel like I was a sissy even though my voice was high. And that moment just made me feel like my whole worldview just came toppling down.
I can relate so much to that because, like yourself, I also had a high voice when I was younger, and I always walked on my toes. And that was something that my family would constantly critique in me, was that I walked on my toes and I looked like a sissy. Like my mom even had a really awful nickname for me when I would walk on my toes. And yeah, it just, there's like little mannerisms that I think queer kids pick up and we don't even know where we get them from. And our parents, as soon as they see any bit of it, will try to almost beat it out of us.
There you go. See any bit of it. Because I've never seen a queer person or a gay cartoon show or anything like that ever stand the way that I was standing.
Yeah.
And inherently walking your tippy toes isn't specifically gay.
Yeah.
But it's too close. It's too
close. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's too effeminate. Too
effeminate.
Yeah.
It just, the way I was standing looked effeminate even though it's not inherently effeminate.
But I think that's also, I mean, there's a lot of research that shows that, queer people have brains more closely associated with the opposite sex than with the sex that they're born. And I don't know, I think that there is some like biological justification for it, and maybe this is a good way to kind of wrap things up, just by like knowing that there is this out there. Like, these are not traits that people can change. They're traits that come naturally to kids and expressions that come naturally to kids. And so by limiting the way that they can be seen and even recognized in society, it is so incredibly damaging for them. We know how important representation is.
Yeah.
And we know that, bills like this are something that we need to do everything we can to fight against.
Yeah. And don't let anybody ever conflate the language about what's actually happening here. Like, sexual orientation isn't inherently wrong to even talk about.
No.
Like, you might mourn the fact that your kid is queer even though you shouldn't. But it's not inherently wrong to like have these discussions and make people feel safe in their own skin, so we don't continue having this problem of suicide.
Yeah.
So, and bullying and depression and all these other things.
Yeah.
So, in a positive note, just lift up people, understand what's happening here, be sad and talk to your friends, speak to your therapist about it. But we need to change that bill. We need to change that law.
We need to change any laws like this. We're too far ahead for this. You know what? And we fought for too long. We fought for too long. We need to fight for, we need to keep defending what we have, and we also need to fight to further equality and make it to where people can live in a more just society. And I think we're slowly getting there, but it's going to take some time. And I think it may be, to where you and I may be retiring at that age when things are really changing, but things are changing. And I am optimistic, especially when I look at younger generations.
I'm optimistic too. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Make sure to check us out on gemofasecretpodcast.com.
Yes.
And, be on the lookout because on March 31st, we're going to have a sober social at the Queen's Head, Portland. That starts sometime after 6 p.m. It's going to be a full sober evening. So whenever you get there, it's going to be sober. And the drag show later in the day is also going to be a full sober drag show as well. And so come meet us. It's going to be like our little meet and greet with all of you, our listeners, to come yell at us or come say hi to us or come compliment us or come talk to us and get to know us a little bit better, see what our faces actually look like. Actually, if you've been on our website, you know what our faces look like. But
yes,
it'll be so nice to be able to chat with each and every single one of you.
Yes, it will. Catch you next week.
Bye.
Bye.